Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. See some people rolling in. We're so excited to have you all here with us today. My name is Chidima Ogajaku. I'm serving as the moderator for today's session. So we're going to head and get started in a couple of minutes. But before that, I'd like to quickly review a few items. So I'd like to remind everyone of our commitment to maintaining a safe and accountable space. So if you experience any issues or need any type of assistance, please reach out to me by sending me a direct message found at the top right corner of the event. So to walk you through the tools in this session, I like to draw your attention to the vertical bar featuring several icons on the right side of the screen. If your event feed is open, it's going to be hiding your vertical bar, so please just make sure you close the event feed by clicking on the X in the upper right corner of the event feed box. Once you can close your event feed, you'll be able to see a vertical bar with several icons. You'll see speech squares, which will function as a chat box for this session, and Q&A icon, which we use to ask the presenters questions. And if there's a question that you would really like to see answered, you can go ahead and vote for that question. And so that will let us know that this is a question that many of the participants have, and we'll make sure to address that. Next, there's an icon of people indicating the participants in this session. And lastly, you'll see two papers stacked on top of each other. These are the resources for this session, and it will also contain the slide deck. In order to enable us to keep up with the questions, we ask that you please use the Q&A icon, which again is located in the vertical bar, is the third icon from the top. And this is the area where you can share your questions with the speakers, and feel free to vote for any questions you would like to see answered. If at any time during this session you need to step away, take a break, debrief, or decompress, please feel free to do so. Our wellness room is open, and you may enter the wellness room by clicking on the wellness room button on the top left side of the event navigation bar. A member of a team will meet you there. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for this session. David Spellman is a behavior specialist in Charlotte, North Carolina. His main objectives are sending off positive energy and meeting students where they are to improve their academic and behavioral status. David specializes in creating innovative ways to incorporate hip hop pedagogy, social and emotional learning, service learning, and cultural responsiveness to make impact on his students. Thank you, David, for joining us today. The stage is all yours.
Thank you, Chidima, and then thank you to everybody who is here that chose to attend this session. You'll learn that everything I do is through the lens of hip hop. So I must quote Jay-Z when he said, "You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here with me," and I appreciate that. But we'll go ahead and get right into the session. All right, so I know we can already see it. The session title is Just Like Music, How Hip Hop Can Boost Social Emotional Learning. So once again, my name is David Spellman, but at this point, I feel like we're family. So you can just call me Spell. That's what I go by in my school district. I am a behavior specialist for Charlotte Mecklenburg schools, but most importantly, I am a hip hop educator. So let me preface this by saying, I am not a classically trained teacher. I've always had roles of behavior specialist. I started out in mental health. I do a lot in the community, but I did write a curriculum, which I will talk about a little bit later. And my whole goal is all about destigmatizing hip hop for educational consumption. I know hip hop has a lot of stigma around it as far as negative references, drugs, killing, misogyny, all of that. They are very prevalent in hip hop. But hip hop does offer positive aspects, and that's where I focus a lot of my time and energy. So here's the first pop quiz that I'm going to give everybody, and I'll go into the chat to see if anybody has it correctly. Hip hop started with 4 original elements. Does anybody in the session know what those 4 original elements were? So now I'm looking at the chat. So once again, does anybody know the 4 original elements of hip hop? And what I've learned in the remote learning environment is wait time is key. I see telling a story. No, it's all good. I will definitely enlighten us all. Verse, rhythm. You got one aspect of it. Beatboxing is an aspect. DJ is one for sure. Breakdancing is one for sure. Rhyming goes with the MC, so we got 3. Graffiti, yes, I see all 4 elements. Good job, team. So the four elements of hip hop are MCing, breakdancing, DJ, and graffiti. But I'm going to talk about the less often fifth element, and I'll get into that as we continue. But once again, thank you all for being here. So let's go. A little bit more about myself. I'll start from left to right. I was born in the UK. I know you can tell by my accent, but the first 6 years of my life were spent in London. I then moved to Sweden. I then moved to Philadelphia. I then went across the country to San Francisco. And then me and my family moved to Guam, is where you see that picture on the left. So I have to do this for all my Chamorros, all my Guamanians. So the way we say what's up, the way we say hello in Guam is afade. And this is me in 1995 with a microphone in my hand. So once again, everything I do is from the lens and perspective of hip hop. So one of my favorite hip hop groups was a Tribe Called Quest, and Phife Dawg said this lyric in a war tour. He said, "I have a quest to have a mic in my hand. Without that, it's like Kryptonite and Superman." And I feel the same when I'm talking about how hip hop can be used in a positive aspect. I'm always going to be the MC in this case, holding the mic and talking about these positive references. The next image you see is Positive Archer Solutions. So that is the company that I created, where my book is underneath and all the good work that I'm doing surrounding hip hop pedagogy comes from. The next image, if you are in the North Carolina area, specifically the Charlotte area, that is a local legend right there, Hugo the Hornet, which is part of our NBA team, the Charlotte Hornets. But like I said, I do a lot of work in the community, especially focused on literacy. So that is the image from one day we did their book bus at one of our local schools. And then on the right, of course, that is my mother, Miss Janet. My father couldn't make it because they only gave me one ticket. So this was from an event. I was nominated for the Amazing Millennial Award. Even though I didn't win, I wanted both of my parents to be there because typically when it comes to a Black male, it's always in the references of sports. So I did play sports, but I was more excited, or I got more honor from when I made the AB honor roll, when I made the Dean's List in college. And of course, for activities like this, being nominated for the work I was doing in the community, I wanted my parents to be there because it's more than just sports for me, even though sports is a big part of my life still. All right. So with this right here, I know I may not have just educators in the K-12 sense, but if you're in mental health, if you work as a mentor, if you're dealing with youth in some capacity, or even if you're dealing with adults, if you're a facilitator of PDs, you are essentially a teacher. So I always start off my PDs like this. I don't care if you've been teaching for 2 weeks or 30 years. I know we just had Teacher Appreciation Week, but I always want to send love, which is another concept of hip hop, sending love to everybody doing this good work. So the objectives that I would like to cover during our short time together is I want to give everybody an introduction to social and emotional learning, and then an updated version of the Castle 5, which I'll get in more in depth in the next slides. The importance of culturally responsive teaching. So I know we see that CRT, but not that CRT, but this is culturally responsive teaching. And like I said, I'll go in more in depth later. I'm going to give an introduction to the concept of sampling in hip hop and how we've been sampling all our lives. And then I'm going to take that concept of sampling and show you how I created a whole SEL curriculum with hip hop at the foundation. So there's two other additional objectives I would like to, impart on everybody that's here. You are all hip hop. I just want to put that out there. You might not know that, but I'm going to make those parallels for you. But then just really, once again, that underlying theme that everything I do is showing how education, hip hop should be there. If your culture of your students is hip hop, if that community is hip hop, then hip hop should be brought into the schoolhouse to boost up the rigor and to boost up the academic standards. Right here, what you see is what we traditionally call the Castle 5. So if you're unfamiliar, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, which is hence CASEL or CASTLE, but the 5 comes from the 5 core competencies of SEL. So, clockwise, self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and then social awareness. And typically, I work in K-12. I hear when it comes to SEL, social and emotional learning, oh, this is just for those kids. The bad kids, the kids who don't speak English. Looking at these 5 core competencies, every single human on the planet could benefit from self-awareness, from their social awareness, from developing better relationship skills. That spans all genders, all races. That spans everything. Knowing how to interact with another person. That's just not for a kid that's lower academically or lower socially. Everybody could benefit from these skills. So I always have to highlight that. That second bullet, there's many definitions of social and emotional learning, but I really resonate with this one. Social emotional learning is the process of developing self-awareness, self-control, and interpersonal skills that are vital to school, work, and life success. Essentially, life success, because school and work fall under that. Going back to the earlier point, that less often talked about fifth element of hip hop is knowledge of self. Knowledge of self is social and emotional learning. If you know who you are, your emotions, your strengths, your weaknesses, if you're able to regulate your emotions and then you're able to interact with the world at large, you have a good knowledge of self. So I like to coin the term hip hop equals social and emotional learning, because social and emotional learning is knowledge of self. Knowledge of self is the fifth element of hip hop. So let me go to the chat. Does anybody agree with that statement? Hip hop is social emotional learning. And I'll just give some time to see what comes in the chat. Okay, I see a lot of agrees, a lot of yeses. I appreciate the congregation. All right, and then that, like I said, that last one, there are 5 core competencies. So this is the house in which I live in. Now, this, I must give credit. This is Cloud9 World, which is an online SEL platform. And I just love what they've done with the Castle 5 and giving it new terminology. Self-awareness, we want to think of that as insight. Self-management, regulation. So I work in K-12. K-5, regulation, that's needed across the boards in K-5. Responsible decision-making, critical thinking, relationship skills. I love the word collaboration. And then social awareness, connection. I am the ultimate connector. I feel like when you meet anybody, you must build on a foundation of what are the similarities to start to build a great relationship. So we always have to be connected to other individuals. I'm also a student of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in that book, he always talks about how we live in an interdependent society. And I truly believe that. In the self-awareness competency, I know it's kind of small, hopefully you can see it, but that last bullet point says mattering. So let me tell you why that is so important for me. Going back to the picture of the About Me section, when I lived in Guam, I would be that MLL student here in the States. The thing that I loved about Guam, the reason I was even holding that microphone, the principal came up to me and said, "David, you like to talk." And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I do like to talk. We're having a play. We're going to utilize that skill. That is a strength for you, because some people don't like talking in front of crowds. Some people just don't have that articulation. And we're going to use what will be perceived as a negative thing in the classroom, and we're going to enhance you by putting you, center stage to let you lead our play." So that made me feel like I mattered to them, even though I was in a quote unquote foreign land. So when I talk about mattering, I'm gonna take it even further. If you guys are familiar with the Chetty study, so Raj Chetty and a group of researchers, they were measuring upward economic mobility, and I believe this happened in 2014. So they took the 50 biggest cities in the United States, and they wanted to see if a child was born in poverty, what were their chances of escaping poverty as they grew up and became an adult. And sadly to say, the city in which I live in, the city that I'm in right now, Charlotte, North Carolina, was ranked 50 out of 50. We were dead last. So when I talk about mattering, I don't care if my students come from East Charlotte, from West Charlotte, if they came from Honduras, if they came from the Dominican Republic, if they came from Haiti, if they came from Nigeria. They have to matter on my campus. They have to matter in my city for them to escape these things that are going against them, this upward economic mobility. And we know the pain points of what that is, housing and all the things. So mattering when it comes to that self-awareness, it has to be key for our students and just for our young people that we're serving. Going even further about the importance of social and emotional learning. Like I said, I'm in K-12, but I know there's mental health experts. I know there's people from higher ed. There's people from all walks of life. But like I said, social emotional learning is key to school, work, and life success. So focusing on SEL, you can boost up attendance, behavior, and academic progress. Even if you're not working in a school per se, you're dealing with young people, these things are still key because they're going to somebody's school. So if we can enhance and build upon those social and emotional learning skills, man, we will just change the trajectory of their lives. But the thing I want to focus on with these three images right here on attendance, that first one, that first key indicator is engagement. On behavior, the third one is teacher-student relationships. In my mind, that's still engagement. And then on that last one for coursework, number 3 also is engagement. We have to engage students to get the best out of them. Regardless if our coaches are different, regardless if they don't speak the first same language as we did, we have to engage students to boost them up socially, academically, behaviorally. So everything I do is about engaging our students, which hence the point in my bio, meeting students where they're at. That is so key. Now, right here, if you're unfamiliar with Zaretta Hammond's work, let me offer this nugget or this gem I would like to say. Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, which is a good resource to do a book study if you're dealing with kids that are not of your same ilk, if you don't come from the same, environment, if there's different, languages, this is a great book to help you interact with those students. So as you can see on the screen, Culturally Responsive Teaching is about helping culturally and linguistically diverse students who have been marginalized in schools build their capacity, build their skill and capacity to do rigorous work. So I use the method of hip hop, but if your students are from Spanish speaking countries, you need to incorporate their culture. If your students are from the Pacific, you need to incorporate their culture. It doesn't matter who's in front of you. If you're in an affluent setting, you need to use popular culture, the Americana, as they like to say. It doesn't matter what group of students are in front of you, what group of young people are in front of you. You have to use their culture to boost up their skill and their capacity to do the work, whether it's in an academic sense or making those connections. Once again, that connection, that engagement is so key. And culturally responsive teaching and or instruction is the way you do that. And hold on, let me put my phone on silent. I'm sorry about that. All right. So here is my claim to fame. Taking hip hop, and once again, the perception of hip hop is very negative. I want to show everybody how you can use hip hop in positive ways. So I'm going to give you multiple examples, but in this one, this comes from a song by Joel Santana, and this was actually a Nike promotion back in the day. So this song has no cursing. You can play this for any young person you want. But as you see on the bottom, as you listen to these 2 minutes and like 17 seconds, powerful, motivating, and uplifting lyrics. So you're going to hear the song and then how I took lyrics out of that song and connected them to social and emotional learning competencies.
Sin, 10. I mean, even though we stand alone, we stand together.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for landing. Fasten your seatbelts. Thank you for flying Air Force Airlines. Over me. Call me the captain.
Just blaze. They say family that prays together stays together, and one that walks apart just falls apart. So together we stand, divided we fall, united we form Voltron and take on all. Let's move, yes. The birds left the nest. I'm all grown up, I gotta fly with the rest. Best of the best is what we strive to be. Yeah, a legacy is what we trying to leave. Yeah, let's say goodbye to the past. The future's here at last. The second coming, the new beginning. The truth is speaking. You should listen. So glorious, victorious. We take what we want. We born warriors. So glorious, victorious. We take what we want. We born warriors. If you fall, get up and try it again. If you drop, get up and try it again. If you fall, get up and try it again. If you drop, get up and try it again. We tired of being runners up. We coming up. We ready for whatever you put in front of us. Blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah. We dripped all three just to get here. No longer will I wake up in my dreams just vanish. It's staring right at me. I must take advantage. Hard work pays off. You get what you put in. So why stop now? Gotta keep pushing. We in the fight to the finish. So I'm my own author. Here's my story. My life's been full of pain. Now where's my glory? I'm so glorious, victorious. We take.
I'm smiling because I see some of the chat. So, of course, in high school, I thought I was in Dipset, and I like the point that was made about this song, with the slower lyrics where you can hear it. And that's the whole purpose. The power is in the word. Like if we say there's power in the tongue, meaning affirmations and manifesting things, there's power in music, that frequency. Those lyrics hit those ears, they penetrate the mind. Man, this is something higher than just, what we're talking about right now. But let me pull a couple of the lyrics. There's many lyrics I could have pulled, but this is an activity I've done with students. Typically, when the first time I meet students, I do an about me, and I typically use that song, and we talk about some of these lyrics. So as you see on the screen, best of the best is what we strive to be. A legacy is what we trying to leave. That's right there in that competency of self-awareness. If, of course, our students feel like they're the best at many things that may be negative, but trying to shift their mindset about being more positive, being confident in more positive things. That lyric leads to a great discussion about self-confidence. Another lyric that I pulled from the song is, if you fall, get up and try it again. If you drop, get up and try it again. Similar to that Aaliyah song, but now we've shifted over to the competency of self-management. With the skill is resilience. You're never going to get everything right on the first try. Like life would be much easier that way. And they say nothing ventured, nothing gained. So if we try to accomplish something, we get knocked down. We have some setbacks. Do we have the perseverance? Do we have the resilience to keep going? Or are we just going to always give up when the first sign of tension comes? This is a skill. Once again, this is not just for Black kids. This is not just for Latino kids, Asian kids, kids that are new to the country. This is for every single person, because we're all going to face setbacks. We're all going to face hardships at some point in our lives. So developing these resilience, the resiliency muscle, building our stress management muscles are key to success. Key to success. So let me take it back. Let me give a highbrow, analysis. We've just worked on self-confidence and resilience through a hip-hop song. There may be some people in this chat, in this presentation right now, who would have never thought you can use hip-hop in that capacity. Once again, destigmatizing hip-hop for educational consumption, but just really showing the positive aspects of hip-hop. That is my mission. That is my mission. All right. As the theme of engagement continues, what I've done, what I'm showing you right now is something I need to trademark for real. Creating unique experiences, Q. Engagement. I seen it in the chat. How can they reach me if they don't know me? We have to create those unique experiences. So what I'm going to show now is the concept of sampling. So in hip hop, we have this thing, and it's not just hip hop, it's in all genres of music. You take an original composition, whether it's a piece of a lyric, whether it's a drum bass, a guitar riff, and you take that and then you enhance it to make a new work. So what you're going to hear is two songs, Hard Knock Life by Jay-Z, and then I want the trained ear to tell me, how did Nipsey Hussle sample it with his song of Hustle and Motivate? So let's get ready. So now I want you guys to pay attention. How did Nipsey Hussle sample Hard Knock Life? Gotta say, I got a good group today. So yes, the beat was slowed down, and I have to agree. I listen to Hustle and Motivate every day, but this right here was a high level of sampling. So Hard Knock Life was also a sample. Does anybody know where that chorus comes from? So now I'm looking at the chat. Does anybody? I see it. Imani. Yep. So let me give y'all that visual representation. So Jay-Z sampled Annie. Nipsey Hussle sampled Jay-Z. This is a high-level version of sampling. Now, like I said, I typically do this training in front of educators, and we have been sampling in education for years. So that excerpt that you see on the right is coming from the transformative social and emotional learning towards SEL and service of educational equity and excellence. So the quote that was pulled, for example, research has shown that having a positive sense of one's racial identity can buffer Black students against school-based discrimination and support one's academic success. So this was not Robert Yeager's original thought. He sampled this from an article, Racial Identity and Academic Attainment Among African-American Adolescents. So Miss Tabby Chavis and her crew, he sampled that. If you've ever written a research paper, if you have your master's, if you have your doctoral degrees, that works cited page, that is nothing but sampling. So let me tell you something. If you didn't know it, you have been hip hop because you have been the MCs sampling that work to turn in your papers. So we've been sampling in education. Education and hip hop, the original elements of hip hop are very synonymous. Now, this is where we bring it full circle. This is how I use the sampling technique to create a whole book and curriculum. So the book that I wrote, Just Like Music, Social Emotional Learning Inspired by Hip Hop, I sample many hip hop songs, essentially hip hop lyrics, and I create SEL lessons. So that image that you see on the right says, who needs change? Everybody's raising their hand. So in the intro, I talk about specifically how K-12 needs changes. But we all know what's happening in K-12, what's happening in higher ed is just a microcosm of what's happening at the world at large. The next image, that whole thing of people want change, but do not want to change. Everybody has their hands down. Going even further, who wants to lead the change? We now have a ghost town. So on that fourth image, yes, that's yours truly, but everybody who's here tapped in this presentation, but going even further, so many great individuals I've met on this journey who want to do things differently, who wants to change the trajectory of our students, of our youth in creative and innovative ways. Like that is my tribe. Everybody in this presentation, you are now a part of my tribe. So let's just not have this be a one-off. Let's collaborate in the future, regardless of your geographical location. Let's collaborate. But now you're going to hear how I sampled the track Dreams and Nightmares and made a whole lesson out of it. So I have to preface this. We know what this song can do to some people. I don't need y'all acting up too much wherever you're at. If you're at work, if you're at home, don't get too crazy when the song plays. To the person in the home office so they can act as crazy as they want to. But we know what this song does to people. It was used by the Philadelphia Eagles, and you hear it all pretty much everywhere now. But what I've done is I just took that little portion of the intro. I used to pray for times like this, to rhyme like this, so I had to grind like that, to shine like this. I make an entire chapter out of that one line. So in my culture, we would call this a mashup. But in an educational sense, we call it a crosswalk. So I referenced Mr. Covey earlier. So I take that line and compare it to Habit 2 and 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So Mr. Covey talked about how all things are created twice. You have the first creation, which is that mental creation. Taking it back to the lyric, when you pray for something, you're praying for something that you want, but do not have at the current time, i.e. a goal you want to accomplish, a place or a position that you want in the future. That is the mental creation. The second creation is the physical manifestation. So do everything you would need to do to take that vision and then bring it to fruition. Going back to the lyric, when Meek said I had to grind like that, we all know when you're on your grind, that's late nights, early mornings, 2-a-days, doing everything you need to do to accomplish the goal. So from right there, this little part of the lyric of Meek Mill's Dreams and Nightmares is comparable to Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Once again, I'm further solidifying the point. Hip hop can be used to boost up positive attributes. If you didn't believe me now, I hope you are kind of shifting your mindset. Hip hop belongs in places that traditionally it hasn't been accepted. When you have a trained ear, when you have a great person that sees through the BS of hip hop and can pull the positive out of it, like I'm about to show you right now. So from this lyric, I'm going to create a whole chapter. So now we're still in self-management, but the actual skill that we're focused on during this chapter is goal setting. If we're talking about accomplishing things, exercising the mental creation and then the physical manifestation to accomplish goals, we're working on our goal setting skills, our goal setting abilities. My curriculum is no different than somebody's ELA curriculum, their math curriculum. I have objectives just like any other textbook, quote unquote, would have. Also in the intro, I talk about these core competencies, these social and emotional learning skills being muscles. If I wanted to increase my biceps, I would do a bunch of curls. But I feel like our students are deficit in these social and emotional learning skills, these muscles. So we have to be intentional about strengthening them. So if I'm talking about goal setting during this chapter, we're going to strengthen their self-management muscles by constructing a vision board that illustrates that first creation concept. So that vision, not to get too biblical, but there's a verse in the Bible: without vision, the people will perish. How do you know where you're going if you don't have a vision? We talk about, vision board parties for adults, but why do we have to wait till our children become adults? We can start them off now, having a vision of what they want their lives to look like, and then helping them get the skills to help them accomplish it. So not only do I want them to put academic goals, because like I said, I'm primarily in K-12. I'm working with young people that are in K-12, but I just don't want academic goals. I want their personal goals as well, because I see them more than their student ID number. I see them more than their test scores. What are their personal goals? Because that needs to be a part of their vision as well. And like I said, everything that we're doing during this chapter is focused on goal setting. I failed to mention, not only the book that I created does it focus on hip hop culture and social and emotional learning, I also have embedded English language arts standards. So as they read that chapter, the first question is always, what is the theme? So what is the theme of Philadelphia? What is the theme of Lagos, Nigeria? What is the theme of Toronto, Canada? What is the theme of Detroit? I want to be comfortable knowing that they received something from the chapter. So after they read it, they have to write it down, and then we have a discussion. What was Philadelphia about? And I let them verbalize it however they received the message. Not only is there theme, but we have vocabulary for every chapter. So if we're talking about goal setting, as you can see on the screen, goal, fruition, motivation, on your grind, renaissance, and visualize. So now not only am I working on their critical thinking skills, their reading comprehensions, I'm giving them new vocabulary words, because something I tell my young people all the time is, I never want you to be in a room and people are talking over you, using terms that you're unfamiliar with. So I typically tell my kids, you can be the best dressed person and still be an AB honor roll student. Like, why do you have to choose one or the other? So boost up your vocabulary, be articulate. Like, there's no shame in being, dressing nice and still having the knowledge too. This is the guided practice, which is more collaborative, more cooperative, groups, teams, however they want to do it. Of course, pre-COVID, you will get your magazines, your poster boards, your glue sticks, and all of that. But if you don't know about canva.com, here's another gem I'm giving the people. If you create an account, they can pull any image from the internet and create their vision board. So of course, like I said, when students are creating their vision board, I want academic goals and I want personal goals. But then there's another component to this. When they get done, they have to get up in front of their peers, their cohort, and explain to everybody why they chose the goals that they chose. Because what typically happens is multiple people have similar goals, and now they're starting to establish their relationship, because nobody does it alone. Let's just put that out there. Like I said, referencing Stephen Covey again, that interdependent society. We need other people to be successful. We need other people. The clothes that we have on, we didn't create these. It's not old school days. Somebody had to create these clothes, so we needed somebody to help us stay clothed. So we live in a truly interdependent society. So we always want to need other people to help us along with our journey. With the independent practice, like I said, they need to take one academic goal and then one personal goal and do everything A to Z, what they would need to do, not what Mr. Spellman needs to help them with, not what Ms. Johnson needs to help them with, but everything they need to do to accomplish that goal. Of course, I'm here for support, but it's an inside out approach. What do you have to do to accomplish the goals that you set forth? There's always a lesson wrap up. So with the first two, those are explicitly stated in the text. What is that first creation? What is that second creation? But the third one always trips them up because it's not explicitly stated in the text. So I typically ask students, we just read this whole chapter. We did these activities. What do you feel, young person, that you would need to achieve any goal? So some of the responses I've heard throughout the years is a positive environment. I need to boost up my self-confidence. I may need to find a mentor. When I hear answers like that, I do this because I know kids are receiving the message which I try to convey to them. Hey, I need to change something about myself. I need to work something on internally to get to where I need to be. The knowledge of self. Once again, hip hop culture is essentially knowledge of self. So it needs to be brought into the schoolhouse. It needs to be brought into the community centers. Yes, hip hop as in the mainstream form is very negative, profanity laced, all of that good stuff. But the essence of hip hop is positive, going further than those four original elements and then that fifth one of knowledge of self. But the four principles of hip hop when it started in the late 70s, peace, love, unity, and having fun. That's why I get so discouraged when I see hip hop today, because it's not built off of the pillars that it came from. A lot has changed with mainstream hip hop. But as you can see, I'm trying to bring it back to the essence to improve my young people, improve people in general. And like I said, through that chapter, we've actually touched on standards. So in the state that I live in, the North Carolina course of study, through the chapter we just talked about, Philadelphia, these are the standards that it satisfies. And I've even done it for the Common Core state standards because some states have state specific, but more states than not have just the general Common Core state standards. So what we've just done with the chapter of Philadelphia is worked on social and emotional learning competency of self-management, focused on goal setting. We boosted up literacy skills through hip hop culture. Typically it's a win-win. This is a win-win-win. So for the final thoughts, and so like I said, not even if you're just a teacher, but if you're working with young people in any capacity, is what you're doing, can those young people see their culture or their interests in that method that you're trying to reach them through? Then how can you engage the five senses? With the chapter we just did, of course, we had the visual, actual looking at the things, the auditory of hearing the music, the tactile of creating their vision board. But imagine if I got every student that I was working with that day a Philly cheesesteak. Let them smell Philadelphia. Let them taste Philadelphia. I used to live in Philly. I know what that tastes. I know what that does to a young person. I know what that does to anybody when you eat a Geno's Philly cheese. And then in every chapter of my book, there's this affirmation. You have greatness inside of you. That's not just for my young people that I'm working with. That's for anybody that is in my voice. You have greatness inside of you, but the challenge is you have to identify that and then cultivate it, because everybody's greatness looks different. You have to find and identify your greatness, then cultivate it, and then showcase it to the world. So thank you for your time. I actually did pretty good. They say we're going to stop at 11:40, 2 minutes to spare before the question and answer. So like I said, my intent is not for this to be a one-off. I would love to collaborate in some form or fashion. So there, I have left my email address, my website, and then you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And I believe you all have the slide deck. It's in the material. So if I click off of this, you'll still be able to access it. But I'll just hold it up for a few more minutes. positivearcher@gmail.com is the email address. positivearchersolutions.com is the website. And then on LinkedIn, David Spellman. But I definitely appreciate your time. For the ones who decided to join in, let's continue to do innovative and creative things to engage our students to change their trajectories, which will essentially change their lives. Like that's what we work with young people for. We want to help them change their lives.
Thank you so much, David, for that very engaging and entertaining presentation. I know I was hyped in my own home dancing to the song. Sounds like the chat was too. I saw a lot of GIFs. People were really doing that, but also hyping us up on new ways that we can, innovative ways we can help to engage and connect with youth and empower them to be better. So we really appreciate your insight and that you shared with us today. Now we're going to move on to our question and answer portion of this presentation. So if you all have any questions that you want to ask David, anything about the presentation, ways that you can implement these techniques with the youth that you work with, go ahead and ask that in the Q&A section, and we'll get David to answer those. So the one question we had to be how to connect. So you share that information. And so again, it's in the slide deck if you'd like to connect with David. He has his email address, his LinkedIn, different ways you can connect.
And I'll say this too, because a question that I typically get asked is, well, of course, I'm much older than the young people I'm working with. Those songs may not resonate. It's not even about the song. It's about the lyric and the message, like connecting it to those social and emotional learning skills. But in the book, there's always a challenge for the students. Okay, for Philadelphia, we talked about goal setting. So the challenge is, okay, find an artist that's relevant now. If you're listening to NBA Youngboy, if you're listening to whoever, can you find a lyric or a song that talks about goal setting? And what happens a lot of times is they can't find a lyric that talks about these positive things. So I asked them, it's kind of like a diet. If I'm only eating fast food, that's going to be detrimental to my health. If I'm only consuming negative music, that's going to also be detrimental to my health. So you need to mix it up, whether it's gospel, whether it's pop. It can't just be a strictly diet of F this, F that, drugs this, drugs that. No, you have to mix up your diet because you just don't only eat fast food. So you got to incorporate some of those veggies, those fruits. So it can't just be negative music. They need to incorporate some Stevie Wonder sometimes. So I just help them to change up their musical diet like they would their nutritional diet.
All right, we do have one question in the chat, David. So do you have a list of suggestions for songs, artists, or lyrics?
Of course, shameless plug. If you get the book, Just Like Music, Social Emotional Learning Inspired by Hip Hop, there's going to be 17 songs and lyrics that you can pull from. But I would say A Tribe Called Quest. Let me say this. So they taught me the word marauders. They have an album called Midnight Marauders. And in one of their interludes, it's like they're on an elevator. And the lady says, the word maraud means to loot. In this case, we loot for ears. I was a young person hearing that. I never learned that in school, the definition of marauder. A Tribe Called Quest was my teacher in that moment that taught me a new vocabulary word. So I would say A Tribe Called Quest. Of course, there's going to be some songs that may have profanity, that may talk about, all the things. But if you really listen in to a lot of their songs, you can pull some positive messages. I would say KRS-One, that's a little bit more old school, but he's coined with this phrase. He says, rap is something you do. Hip hop is something you live. And I hope I'm starting to change your mindset of hip hop being more than just the person you see on the streaming channels and all that. Hip hop is an actual culture that is more than just the person rapping. There's so many different elements and aspects on a positive tip when it comes to hip hop. But other songs, even Jay-Z has some powerful stuff, Nas. But like I said, there's in pockets that you got to be able to pull those lyrics from a song that talks about, whatever it may talk about. But how about this? If you email me, we can definitely have a much broader conversation, and I can actually give you a list of more artists and songs.
Thank you, David. And I went ahead, there was a couple of questions about where they can purchase your book. So I went ahead and shared your link. Should be pinned, so you all should be able to see where you can access that book and get some more resources on how to support your youth. All right, we have another question. So Amanda shared that I provide mental health support in a school. Are your lessons able to be adapted for a shorter time frame or spread out across several sessions?
Absolutely. So what I've given you was the framework, but you use it as fit. So I'll give you a perfect example. I was working with this charter school, and the teacher asked, hey, I do spoken word. Can I add elements of spoken word to one of your lessons? Absolutely. That's hip hop by nature. We took nothing and made it something. So if you need to modify and cater the lessons, the chapters to your specific group of young people, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. We do have one question in the chat, and I just want to remind everyone, make sure you're using the Q&A session so I'm not missing any questions. But we do have one question that says, do you have any tools for youth advocates to present this concept to for their districts for implementation in schools?
Essentially just me doing a similar training. I do. I guess the short answer is yes. And it's funny because the last time I did something of the sort, I actually incorporated a DJ. And it was a student DJ. So letting them see the element of DJing, but just in the whole realm of hip hop culture being something that can be used for the positive. So in short, yes.
Another question. How can I connect with a client that enjoys negative rap music and thinks that he will one day end up in jail? He thinks he's like his father and will follow in his negative footsteps.
Now, Miss Cecilia, that's a loaded question, but I'm gonna do my best. There's this concept of exposure leads to expansion. So if he only likes negative rap music and thinks he'll end up in jail, not to say take him to a scared straight program, but see if there's ways you can collaborate with law enforcement and kind of get him in the environment so he can really see like, hey, is this really where you want to be? But then on the inverse, like I really need you to dig deep and find out what are his strengths, what are his interests outside of music, because we have to build upon the things that he likes already to get him to change that vision. But no, I have students like that currently, and I'm really doing a lot of digging to say what is something positive that you can say. Because if I ask them their strengths, they'll say, "Oh, I can fight," or "I never lost," these negative things, or I do this X amount of drugs. And I'm like let's really think about that. And so here we go. Once again, everything is Stephen Covey. So begin with the end in mind. I've done this exercise with students, and I told them, if tomorrow you die, what would be your legacy? What will people remember about you? And so this is me saying it jokingly. I told these group of students that were high school students, I said, if the only thing people remember about you is that you rolled the best blunts, you did not live a positive life. If all they cared about was how you smoked, that's not positive. That's not a legacy. That's not what you want to leave. And they were laughing, but they were like, oh, it hit them because they're like, oh, I'm the person they called to roll. And I'm like, now imagine if you died. That's what you want people to remember about you? So I would say with that young person, Ms. Ellington, if you died tomorrow, what would they say about you? Are you okay with that message? Are you okay with that legacy? And let's see his response.
Another question we had, I teach a therapeutic songwriting workshop with youth, how to label emotions and process experiences. Do you have any tips on how to talk about the violence without glorifying it?
So in terms of talking about violence, it will be more about conflict resolution, because we are always going to have conflict in our lives. From my standpoint, because I do have conflict resolution chapters that specifically address violence. And it's like, what are the consequences? So when we think about consequences in the traditional sense, it's always those negative consequences. So one of the lyrics that I use in the book is, beef is only good when you're in the burger business. And I talk about what are some positive consequences of beef? There are none. But what are the negative consequences of beef? My parents' house might get shot up. I could get seriously hurt. I could go to jail. Like you really have to bring it to them in that realistic form. Like, okay, let's say you and somebody were having a conflict and you ended up killing them. What's going to happen? Not only is your life affected, but their life is affected too. So it's not even glorifying it, but it's bringing the reality of these are possible consequences of engaging in beef and violence. So if we don't strengthen those conflict resolution skills, this is what's going to be your future.
Absolutely. I think this is our last question. I can think of a ton of songs that would be amazing, but they have some questionable language for students. Is there an app that can bleep out or alter words that you use?
Honestly, I don't know if they still have it, but there's this thing. If it's a song on YouTube, you can do YouTube downloader, and that's pretty much what you saw with mine. You can trim the video. Like once you download it, you can manipulate the video so you can stop it where you want it to stop if it has that positive message. Because that's what I did essentially with Dreams of Nightmare. That song talks about a little bit of everything, but I just pulled that little intro because I downloaded that clip from YouTube and I just trimmed it to where I needed it to be. But then also too, with the theme of meeting students where they are, I don't do this so much with middle school kids, but if I have high school kids, 16, 17-year-old, I'm not really concerned about the cursing. I mean, I curse, I listen to the music as well. But of course, if I'm in that setting, I tell my students, always setting the expectation. I don't mind if a curse word comes out, but every second word can't be profanity. I'm okay with it slipping out, or in the context, you're reciting a lyric, but if every other word is profanity, yes, I'm going to take exception to that.
Alrighty. Well, thank you, David, again for sharing your time, experience, and your expertise with us today. If you guys have any more questions, let us know. If not, we can go ahead and wrap up. A lot of thank yous, a lot of appreciations in the chat.
Now, thank y'all for being here. I don't know how many people are in attendance, but I thank each and every one of y'all for choosing my session when you could have chosen so many other great sessions.
Absolutely. And yes, thank you for those who have attended. Thank you so much for being here. So our next session will start in about 30 minutes, and we'll hear from the keynote speaker, who is Dr. Tanisha Foster Freeman, and she will be exploring the individual, interpersonal, and organizational factors contributing to mental health disparities among Black and Brown youth and young adults. So in this session, you'll be able to discover actionable steps to foster caring and equitable systems in collaboration with our communities, aiming to eliminate disparities and create meaningful change. Just another reminder, please go ahead and complete the summit survey on the reception page at the end of the day. So we really appreciate your feedback. And as a reminder, if you're interested in getting the continuing education hours, you'll be able to do that once you submit and complete the survey. Thank you all again for joining us. Thank you, David, so much for that enlightening presentation. I hope everyone has a great day.